LoveLore Library. Chapter 379. She saw that her wrist was red and bruised. She could imagine how much strength Shinwiching used to hold her just now. Thinking of this, she was secretly surprised. How could she lose her composure to such an extent? Does Imperial Consort like His Majesty? That's why you... No. Shin Yueji interrupted her decisively. She was sure that even if she lost her composure because of Feng Juqing, it was not because she liked him. It was because she knew what she was thinking just now. Li Yingying protected her wrist. His Majesty was a rare handsome man. He treated people gently and elegantly. When he talked to people, he looked into her eyes. It did not make people feel that he looked down on her at all. Li Yingying had to admit that she was indeed moved. Even when the horse went out of control just now, it was not because she was afraid, but because it was subconscious. But she did all this according to Shin Yueji's instructions. Didn't Shin Yueji bring her to the palace to seduce the emperor? Although Li Yingying did not understand why Shin Yueji lost her composure just now, she had a woman's intuition that it was because of the emperor. When she raised her head and looked at Shin Yueji again, she found that Shin Yueji's eyes were not on her at all. She did not know when, but she had already lifted the curtain of the carriage and looked outside. Countless black-clothed men descended from the sky, covering the sky and surrounding the carriage. Feng Juqing was surrounded by the men in black, and behind him were the secret guards in brocade clothes she brought. Qiu Yang faced 4 or 5 men in black, but he was not at a disadvantage at all. But as time went by, his strength was consumed and he was wounded in several places. Since her previous life, Shin Yueji rarely saw Feng Juqing show his martial arts in front of so many people. He alone could deal with more than 10 black-clothed men, and he was not inferior at all. Dressed in a white robe, he was as elegant as an immortal. When he was fighting with the black-clothed man, his moves were swift and elegant like the wind. Before the black-clothed man could react, his palm wind was like lightning, quickly ending the black-clothed man's life. The way out of the broken intestine cliff was blocked. At this moment, they were on the highest slope of the broken intestine cliff. The appearance of the black-robed men was like an endless river, coming wave after wave. When the black-robed men were all killed, many more black-robed men appeared out of nowhere. The group of men in black that Feng Juqing brought hiding in the dark had already been injured. Just then, Shin Yueji saw a black-robed man sneaking up on Feng Juqing, who was focused on fighting against the black-robed man. As for the man, it was unclear whether he had noticed it or not. The scene before her eyes overlapped with the scene from her past life. Shin Yueji could even see herself from her past life through the scene before her eyes. When the sword was about to stab Feng Juqing, she shouted desperately to remind the man to be careful. Even she, who had no abdominal muscles, couldn't help but jump down from the carriage to stand in front of him and take the sword for him. This time it was as if the gods were at work. Shin Yueji did not open her mouth to remind him. Halfway through, when Li Yingying was about to speak, she did not forget to grab her arm and cover her mouth with one hand, so that she could not speak. As Shin Yueji expected, the man's snow-white robe was pierced by the sword and his left arm was injured. Blood immediately flowed from his left shoulder. Chapter 380. Shin Yueji decisively put down the curtain of the carriage. Breaking free from her hand, Li Yingying looked at her in disbelief. "Your Highness, just now, there was a sneak attack on the Emperor from behind. Why did you see it? Why didn't you warn the Emperor?" If Shin Yueji didn't warn her, it would be fine. But why did Shin Yueji suddenly reach out to grab her and cover her mouth when she opened her mouth to warn her? For a moment, Li Yingying felt that the woman in front of her hated the Emperor and wanted him to die. This made her think that Shin Yueji lost her composure and scratched her hand when the Emperor hugged her. These two views were different. Hearing this, Shin Yueji raised her eyebrows. There was no panic on her face. Doesn't Miss Li know that in this dangerous moment, even if you see it, you can't open your mouth to warn me? What? Li Yingying looked at her in confusion. Shin Yueji looked back at her with a faint smile. If you shout, the emperor will be distracted. When the emperor was fighting with the men in black, he was very focused. His martial arts is so high, how could he not know that there was someone behind him? If the emperor knew, he wouldn't have been stabbed. No matter how high a person's martial arts is, it can't be compared to a large number of people. Does Miss Li know the consequences if you shout? Those men in black are obviously going to attack the emperor. They don't know that there is someone else in the carriage. No matter what, the emperor will not abandon his woman. Even if Miss Li is still by my side as my maidservant, he will not let an innocent woman take risks. However, if you make a sound, the black-clothed men will know that there is someone else in the carriage. If they want to deal with the emperor, who is highly skilled in martial arts, it will be troublesome enough. Even if there is an endless stream of men in black who appear tirelessly, there will always be an end. When the men in black die, it will be over. But if they know that we are here, they will change their camp and catch us first. At that time, we will become hostages in the hands of the black-clothed men. At that time, not only will we be a burden to the emperor, but even the emperor will also become a fish on the black-clothed men's iron plate because of us. Or is this the result that Miss Li wants to see? Li Yingying had never thought that her momentary worry for the emperor would be seen by Shin Yueji. After listening to her words, it would immediately change. Unfortunately, she couldn't refute Shin Yueji's words. She unexpectedly felt a lingering fear and annoyance. She regretted making a sound just now. She didn't dare to believe that if she made a sound in a moment of desperation, not only would it distract the emperor, but it would also make the black-clothed man realize that they were in the carriage. At that time, the emperor would be forced into a passive situation. Your Highness, she knelt in front of Shin Yueji with lingering fear. It's all my fault. It's all my fault for not being considerate enough. That's why. I almost harmed His Majesty and you. I'm guilty. Please punish me. Chapter 381. I'm afraid he has already rushed over to help His Majesty. The sound of fighting outside was still going on. Feng Juqing was injured, and some of the men in black wanted to step forward, but were hesitant. Li Yingying's heart was completely focused on Feng Juqing, so she naturally didn't notice the strangeness of the men in black. Sitting in the carriage, Shin Yueji's eyes were tightly locked on the group of men in black. Seeing their hesitation, her lips curved into a smile. Just as Li Yingying was hesitating about what to do, she half opened the curtain and revealed her head, which was noticed by the men in black. Immediately, many men in black abandoned the young emperor and waved the sharp swords in their hands to stab them. Li Yingying was so scared that her beautiful face turned pale, and the color had long changed. She should have screamed subconsciously, but because of Shin Yueji's previous words, she found that she couldn't make a sound even though her mouth was open. Looking at Li Yingying like this, Shin Yueji almost laughed out loud. At the critical moment, she saw that the men in black attacked decisively, with the posture of taking Li Yingying's life with one sword. Frowning, she immediately pulled Li Yingying's arm and used her back to block the attack. Your Highness. Li Yingying was shocked and finally cried out uncontrollably. Not far away, Feng Juqing also noticed them when he heard this cry. The men in black attacked very quickly and didn't show any mercy. It was because the person in front of him was Li Yingying that he planned to take her life with one sword, and then use Shin Yueji as a hostage. It was killing two birds with one stone. But he had never thought that Shin Yueji would actually hand over his back for a woman and bear this sword for her. For a moment, it was difficult to withdraw the sword. Until the long sword was almost about to pierce Shin Yueji's body, the men in black forgot to withdraw. A gust of wind swept past her eyes. Puchi, it was the sound of the long sword cutting into flesh. Shin Yueji was pulled into a warm embrace, and the man's muffled groan came from above her head. A faint smell of blood came from the man's body. Shin Yueji looked at the corner of the snow-white robe that was dyed red with blood, and tears immediately fell from her eyes. Your Majesty! She was distressed and helpless, and even looked at the Emperor in front of her with fear. Your Majesty, she was very careful, not daring to touch the wound on his arm. Her tears immediately fell. Emperor, how could you be so stupid? This minister's concubine's life is so lowly, how could you use your body to block it? If something happened to you, what would this minister's concubine do? She sobbed softly. Feng Juqing carried her and stood at the edge of the cliff. They were forced into a desperate situation by the men in black. The scene from her previous life repeated once again. The man carefully protected her behind him. His tall and slender body was covered with countless wounds, but it did not show that he was in a sorry state. He stared intently at the men in black who were approaching them. Whatever you want, come at me. It has nothing to do with her. In this short period of time, a lot of things could happen, without exception. Shin Yueji knew that Feng Juqing's troops were lying in ambush not far from the broken intestine cliff. When the time was right, they would come out to rescue them. This group of black-robed men were also Feng Juqing's men, and they knew what they would face in the end, death. Chapter 382. Sometimes, even Shin Yueji herself did not understand what benefits Feng Juqing had given them. However, some people were like this. Even if you could not give them anything, they would still inexplicably feel that you were good for them. They would die for you without any complaints, without any hesitation, and even sacrifice their lives for you. Shin Yueji was carefully protected behind the man. There was a faint smell of blood on his body. Wounds could be seen everywhere on his body. His snow-white robe had long been dyed red with blood, and his hair was also a little messy. Your Majesty, I am not afraid. As a woman of the military family, even if I die standing, I will never kneel and beg for mercy. They are here for me. It has nothing to do with you. As long as I am here, I will not let you suffer any harm. Dog of an emperor, did you ever think that this day would come when you killed more than 100 people of my Lu family? The leader of the men in black pointed his sword at Feng Juqing. Shin Yueji didn't know why, but even though she knew he was the one who planned everything, she still felt the man standing in front of her suddenly stiffen. After Feng Juqing ascended to the throne, he had killed countless prestigious officials and important ministers in the court within 3 days. Even their wives and children were not spared. At that time, he told the outside world that these people were conspiring to rebel and secretly did things that were detrimental to Feng country and the people of the capital. That was why he ordered them to be beheaded to give an explanation to the people. She was not the only one who was paraded on the streets. These ministers who had sacrificed their lives for Feng country were also paraded on the streets. The people carried baskets of rotten eggs and wild vegetables and threw them at the ministers who were locked in cages. They seemed to have forgotten that during their most difficult times, it was these ministers who felt sorry for them and used their salaries to help them. They also seemed to have forgotten that when they were short of food, those ministers would rather starve themselves to take care of these people. This was also why Shin Yueji did not like to be associated with others. So what if you treated some people well? She was not you, and you were not him. You would never be people of the same world. Some people were good, and some people were evil. An arrow shot toward Feng Juqing. Feng Juqing did not know what was going on. Perhaps it was because of what the black-clad man had said earlier, but Feng Juqing did not react in time. He stood there motionlessly. Li Yingying, who was in the carriage, was already burning with anxiety. She couldn't care less as she shouted, "Your Majesty, be careful." Shen Yueji also came back to her senses at this moment. She pushed Feng Jiuqing heavily, and the unprepared man staggered from the push. Because of her habit, she gave all her strength to him. Under the man's shocked gaze, she was only an arm's length away from the sword. However, she leaned backwards. Yu Ji. This time, Feng Jiuqing's calm eyes finally showed some emotion. It was as if the scene before his eyes overlapped with the scene from a few years ago. There was also a person who, in order to push away that fatal arrow, allowed her delicate body to fall down the cliff. At that time, he had a budget, and he pulled her back in time. But this time, he threw himself onto the cliff and grabbed onto Shen Yueji's hand. His arm was dripping with blood and his hand was holding onto Shen Yueji tightly. Chapter 383. At this moment, his heart was in a mess. He didn't understand and was in a daze. He didn't know why his heart was in a mess. His arm hurt. More blood flowed out from his wound, but he didn't dare to let go. Looking at Shen Yueji's pale face, he gripped her hand tightly. "Hold on tight, don't let go. I'll pull you up. Your Majesty, as long as you're fine, this concubine can be at ease. You're the Emperor of Feng Country, nothing can happen to you. Perhaps this concubine. Don't talk nonsense." The man interrupted her with a hint of anger in his voice. "Nothing will happen to me, and nothing will happen to you." Blood dripped onto Shen Yueji's face. Apart from the bone-chilling wind blowing on her face, the man's blood also dripped onto her face. She looked up at him from below. At this moment, Shen Yueji felt an inexplicable sense of comfort. Perhaps, in her previous life, she shouldn't have been pulled up by him. Perhaps, she should have pried open his fingers and let herself fall. All of this had been personally planned by him, so why was he still able to show such deep emotions? He was so affectionate that Shen Yueji couldn't see any flaws. Tears flowed from the corner of her eyes. She saw that the man's injured arm clearly couldn't hold her firmly, but it was still strenuous. "Your Majesty, let go. If you continue like this, your hand will be crippled." No, the man's smooth forehead was already covered in sweat. He grabbed Shen Yueji's wrist tightly. "Use this concubine's strength to climb up. Don't let go. If this concubine uses your Majesty's strength to climb up, your Majesty's arm will really be crippled. Your Majesty, if this concubine dies, will you remember this concubine forever? Don't talk nonsense." The man's voice deepened. "This concubine once asked about your Majesty and the former Empress." She mentioned Gu Yueqin at this time. It was clear that the man's grip on her hand was about to loosen. But very quickly, he reacted and grabbed her hand again. "If you have anything to say, just say it. Yueji, listen to me. You can't be stubborn at this time. This concubine orders you to climb up." Before the emperor became the emperor, he and the eldest miss of the Gu family went out for a parade. They also encountered a group of assassins in black. At that time, it was also a narrow escape. The emperor risked his life to protect the late empress. The man did not speak. His dark eyes were somewhat indecipherable. Shen Yueji smiled faintly. At that time, the former empress was saved by the emperor, so in the last few years, perhaps the emperor's memory will not be so deep. But if this time, this concubine was not saved by the emperor and fell off the cliff, will the emperor remember this concubine forever? Yu Ji. Realizing what she was about to do, Feng Jiuqing's heart thumped furiously in his chest as he felt an inexplicable sense of panic. However, Feng Jiuqing only tightened his grip around her. "Come up first. I've said that I won't let anything happen to you, so you'll definitely be fine." I still have a group of secret guards hiding nearby. They will be here soon. If you are worried about me, hold on for a while longer. When they arrive, you and I will be fine. Your Majesty, have you ever truly loved someone? Chapter 384. This Chia can feel the Emperor's nostalgia and love for the late Empress. Sometimes, this Chia feels jealous. In this Chia's eyes, even older sister Empress doesn't seem to be as important as a dead person in the Emperor's heart. I also want Your Majesty to remember that even if Your Majesty doesn't love me, I can do what the former Empress can do for Your Majesty. I can die for Your Majesty. I cannot distract Your Majesty. Xin Yueji. I order you to climb up. Your Majesty, if there is a next life, I hope that you will no longer be the Emperor, and I will not be a woman from a family of generals. We will just be a couple from an ordinary family. The last sentence was a little fake, but also a little sincere. Xin Yueji just couldn't accept it. She was loyal to him, but why did she end up like this in the end? Even if she didn't love him anymore, she still wanted to ask for an explanation. She wanted to know, if they were just a couple from an ordinary family, would he still use her so much? Would he treat her sincerely? Or, could it be that he still had his own ambition? Would he give himself to someone else and get what he deserved in return? He would climb up step by step. Even if he wasn't the Emperor, he would climb to the highest position. That was him. Your Majesty, your hand is bleeding, and I feel distressed. I like you so much, I won't let your hand be ruined because of me. She opened the man's big hand, one by one, under the man's dark eyes. The man's eyes widened, and his thin lips almost turned red. Xin Yueji. The 3 words were squeezed out from the gap of his teeth, and then he saw that his already numb hand was opened by her, and her whole body was falling uncontrollably. Her beautiful dress had been dyed red with blood, and even her plain face was covered with his blood. There was a smile at the corner of her mouth, as if it was a lifetime ago. He seemed to see the woman who, for him, no matter how much she suffered, would raise her head to smile at him quietly, and say that she was fine. At that moment, his heart suddenly hurt so much that he felt like he was about to suffocate. He rubbed his chest, and it felt like someone was pulling at his heart over and over again, causing him to feel endless pain and suffering. However, it didn't want to kill him. How did this happen? Things shouldn't have developed this way. There should have been another ending. It shouldn't have been like this. He would have been fine, Xin Yueji would have been fine, and they would all be fine. This wasn't the ending he wanted. It wasn't. His hidden guards, who were lying in ambush not far away, had all arrived, and the group of black-clothed men were quickly subdued. He looked at the leader of the black-robed men and walked toward him. He used his sword to lift the black veil on his face. It was a completely unfamiliar face, and it was filled with hatred. It was so undisguised that it shocked him so much that he took several steps back. It was an unfamiliar face, but it was familiar to him. The eldest son of the Liu family, Liu Tiancheng, he was a person who had been dead for a long time. Dog Emperor, you didn't expect this, did you? Chapter 385. He laughed until tears came out of his eyes. Looking at Feng Zhiqing's dark eyes, he didn't even bother to talk nonsense. He directly bit the poison in his mouth and died with blood flowing out of his 7 orifices. He had never thought of going back alive from this assassination. He knew that with his martial arts, he would not be Feng Zhiqing's opponent. Even if it was a meticulous plan, he still wouldn't be able to kill Feng Zhiqing. But for him, it was enough. All of this was enough. Feng Zhiqing staggered and lost his former gentleness and elegance. Qiu Yang saw that there was something wrong with him and quickly went forward to support him. Your Majesty, this subordinate was negligent this time. This subordinate will definitely order a thorough investigation to see who leaked the information. As for Imperial concubine Shin, send someone to look for her. Your Majesty. If she's alive, I want to see her corpse. Yes. Chiao Yang didn't dare to hesitate and led the men in black behind him to search. The broken intestines cliff was so high that it looked like it was shrouded in fog from top to bottom. There was fog everywhere. Even if a person with good qigong fell down, it would be difficult to escape death, let alone a woman like Shin Yueji. On the steep cliff, Shin Yueji looked at the man who was holding her in his arms. His chiseled facial features were cold, and his thin lips were pursed into a straight line. His black eyes were filled with endless hostility. If it weren't for the fact that he was tightening his grip on her hand, she would have thought that the man in front of her had become a walking corpse. Mo Wusheng, why are you here? The two of them fell into the dark cave. The man hadn't put her down yet, but Shin Yueji had already jumped down from his arms and looked at him up and down. The man raised his eyebrows and looked at her coldly. If I'm not here, where do you think I should be? Have you been waiting here for a long time? The man didn't speak, but his cold aura was the best response to Shin Yueji's question. Not only had he been guarding here since a long time ago, deeply afraid that something would happen to her, he had even heard every word that she had said to Feng Jiuqing. Not a single word was missed. She knew he was worried about her. Shin Yueji wiped the blood off her face. I have my own plans, and I've been here before, so I know where to hide. I won't fall to my death. Even if you don't catch me, I'll be fine. At most, when she rolled inside, her wrist would be scratched a little, but this was nothing to Shin Yueji. But seeing the man's face, which was obviously not easy to get along with, if he could freeze just now, not to mention freezing now, he would even implicate others to be frozen together with him. Mo Wusheng, what's wrong? I've already said that I know what I'm doing and that I won't hurt myself. In your heart, what exactly do you think I am? Why didn't you discuss such a dangerous matter with me? Or do you think that I don't have the qualifications to protect you? I didn't, you. If I didn't come here in person, would you let me know that Feng Jiuqing sent an order to the world saying that you fell off the cliff in order to save him? Mo Wusheng, what's wrong with you? The next moment, the man gripped her wrist tightly, not allowing her to break free at all. Chapter 386. Now that I've finally managed to keep you by my side, don't make me feel afraid, okay? I've said it before, Mo Wusheng, I know what I'm doing. Before this, you also promised me that you wouldn't interfere in my affairs. I have my reasons for doing this. Moreover, you're so busy every day and have your own things to do. I don't want you to spend all your time on me. This will make me feel, how can anything compare to you, You know that I don't care about anything. I only care about you. I don't need to do anything. I just want to stay by your side, accompany you, take care of you, and not let anyone hurt you. But you keep rejecting me. In your heart, I've never existed, right? No matter what you do, you disdain to mention it to me. Even if you put your life on the line, I don't deserve to know, right? Men were born to be people of few words. In both her previous lives, the only change was that Mo Wusheng was more thick-skinned and shameless when he spoke to her. But sometimes, his words were still pitifully few. But he wouldn't say so much to her all at once like today. Moreover, they were all words from his heart. That dull and low voice was full of helplessness and pain, just like a person who had been abandoned by her. Shin Yueji was just about to push him away and explain when she was caught off guard. She felt a warm sensation on her neck. She was shocked. He's crying. She felt the man's tears falling on her neck. 1 drop, 2 drop, soaking her neck until it was boiling hot. For a moment, she was dumbfounded. She stood rooted to the ground, not knowing what to say or how to react. After a long time, the man hugged her without letting go. It was so long that Shinyuaji didn't know how long it had been. In short, she felt that a long time had passed. Mo Wusheng, I really didn't mean to hide it from you. To me, it's really a small matter. I care about my life more than anyone else. How can I put myself in danger? I didn't tell you because I can do it on my own. I don't need to rely on men to do what I want to do. Secondly, I've wasted too much of your time these days. I know that you have a lot of things to deal with in private, so I really don't want to trouble you. I'm sorry for making you worry. I promise I won't do it again. Shinyuaji's heart is very uncomfortable, but she still grabs the man's sleeve. Next time, if there is such a thing, I will discuss it with you personally. Don't be angry, okay? She struggled to get up from the man's arms. However, the man hugged her tightly and didn't give her a chance to break free. That tight strength seemed to want to melt her into his bones. Mo Wusheng, you've hugged me for so long. My body is covered in blood. I want to find a place with water to clean myself. I feel very uncomfortable like this. The man hugged her and did not have the slightest intention of letting go. Hey, don't you think the smell of blood on my body is disgusting? As long as it's from you, it won't smell bad. The man was silent for a long time before he spoke. Shinyuaji suddenly smiled. I'm not that stupid to make myself bleed. The blood on this body belongs to Fengjuqing. As long as you don't mind. Chapter 387. Shinyuaji was shocked. Mo Wusheng, what are you doing? Put me down first. The road is slippery, I'll take you to find water. Obviously, the man was very familiar with the geography of the Broken Intestines cliff. He carried her down the steep slope, through a green forest, and Shinyuaji could hear the sound of water from afar. It was sloping down from a high place. It was a waterfall as high as 10 people. How do you know this place? You used to come here often. Putting her down from his arms, Mo Wusheng did not speak, but just stared at the rapid flow of water from above. When Fengjuqing and her met with an accident at the Broken Intestines cliff, he was in the dark. If Fengjuqing did not protect him, he would protect her. He also saw with his own eyes the dependence and deep love in her eyes for the man. At the moment of crisis, it was he who held her hand and pulled her up from the steep cliff. Just now, the scene from a few years ago was repeated, but this time, it was she who personally opened the man's hand. Even when she said those words of deep love to him, Mo Wusheng could no longer see the affectionate look she had when she faced Fengjuqing a few years ago. Her heart, as expected, no longer had him. It could not be said that there was no him, perhaps there was still him, but this deep love, unswerving love, was gradually being ground down, slowly disappearing. The smell of blood, and the blood on her face, a lot of it dried on her face. Shinyuaji was a little disgusted by this sticky smell and touch. Walking to the river, she first washed the serum on her face, and the hem of her clean dress was also stained with blood. She took off her coat, as if she was going to the river to wash when the man did not exist. The man stood 3 steps away from her. Perhaps because some of the blood had soaked through her clothes and touched her skin, Shinyuaji began to hesitate before she made the final move. She looked back at the man 3 steps away from her. Mo Wusheng, I want to take a bath, stay away from me, don't peek. The man slightly raised his eyebrows, his handsome face expressionless, but he stood there with his own thoughts, not moving. Mo Wusheng. Shinyuaji gritted her teeth and shouted, did you hear what I said? I want to take a bath, stay away from me, don't peek. There are wild beasts passing by at the foot of the mountain. I will guard you here, or else you will not be safe. Have you ever seen a beast that isn't afraid of water? Besides, if she went into the water, the beasts wouldn't be able to swim. Even if there were beasts, they wouldn't be able to do anything to her. The man paused and frowned. There are snakes in the water and many unknown poisonous things. Shin Yueji, she held a handful of water and waved it towards the man. Only a few drops of water splashed on his handsome face. The man didn't dodge. He stood where he was. In order to make it easier for her to splash him with water later, he took 2 steps forward. Shin Yueji lost her temper because of his subconscious shameless action. Forget it. She muttered to herself. It wasn't like she hadn't seen it before. She took off her inner clothes. When she was only left with a small dudu, she hesitated. The man behind her was even more terrifying and savage than a beast in her heart. She put the clean clothes on the shore and waded into the water. Mo Wushang glanced at the clothes that she had neatly stacked on the shore. Her clothes were wet in many places, and he remembered that she still had to wear her clothes after her bath. Chapter 388. His dark eyes dimmed a little. He stepped forward, picked up the clothes she had taken off on the shore, and then turned to go elsewhere. Shin Yueji didn't dare to soak in the water for too long. Perhaps it was because of Mo Wushang's words that there was something scary in the water. She took a quick bath and swam back to the shore until the sticky smell of blood on her body dissipated. What are you doing? She looked at the clothes that the man handed to her. Shin Yueji took it. There was still heat on it. For a moment, she couldn't tell what she was feeling. She just said, "Did you dry my clothes? The clothes are damp. You will catch a cold if you wear them." The man gave a brief explanation. Seeing Shin Yueji come out of the water, he consciously turned around and let her put on her clothes first. Mo Wushang, why are you here? Is it because you are worried about me? After she put on her clothes, Mo Wushang turned to look at her. There was a rare seriousness and gentlemanly look on his handsome face. But the way he looked at her was clearly saying, otherwise. Didn't Hong Fui come to you for something? I can't go back now. I can only go back after Feng Jiuqing sends someone to find me. Maybe I will have to stay here for a few days. You can go back first. Don't worry about me. Before she finished speaking, the man hugged her waist again. He didn't say anything, but it was better than talking. Shin Yueji could feel that as long as she was here, the man would not leave. She felt warm and sad in her heart. Such a good man, why did she put all her heart on Feng Jiuqing and not look at him more? If she had fallen in love with Mo Wushang, would none of this have happened? Perhaps she and Mo Wushang now. She clutched the man's collar tightly. Mo Wushang, can you not be so good to me? It was so good that she didn't know how to refuse his kindness. She could only accept it with a clear conscience. She said that she was willing to accept him, but she didn't know how long she could hold on and what the consequences would be. The man looked down at her, his black eyes as bright as stars. His tight lips eased a little because of the anger just now. Now you realize that I am so good to you. Shin Yueji subconsciously grabbed his collar. I realized it a long time ago. Why are you so nice to me? What if I can't give you what you want? Ji knows what I want. Looking at his handsome face, Shin Yueji choked for a moment, her face inexplicably hot. In case I can't give it to you. Carrying her into the cave, Mo Wushang took off his outer robe and placed it on a hard rock before placing her on it. As Shin Yueji sat on it, the man's tall body also pressed down. Shin Yueji was startled and subconsciously placed her hands on his chest. Mo Wushang, don't mess around, her lips were blocked. Unlike the previous few kisses, the man's kiss this time was gentle with a hint of roughness. It was as if a storm had suddenly started after the calm of the storm. Shin Yuiji's hands were restrained by the man and she could not move. She kept her mouth shut and did not want the man to come in. Who knew that he would directly touch her chest with one hand? Seeing that she still didn't let go, his other large hand wandered around her body wantonly, vaguely showing signs of moving downwards. Mo Wushang, don't. The tip of the man's tongue slipped in and entangled with hers. Chapter 389. She licked her lips, which were numb from his kiss, and complained, "Haven't I coaxed you? Why are you angry again? I just apologized to you." The man snorted, "Who accepted your apology?" Listening to his tough tone, Shin Yueji also became angry. "This is my own business. If you can't stand it, then don't look. Who asked you to intervene? I'm not a fool. Even if you didn't come, I wouldn't let myself get hurt." When she met the man's dark eyes, Shin Yueji swallowed the words that were on the tip of her tongue. She sat on the stone and turned her back to him. She didn't know how long it took, until her waist was held in the man's arms. Her nose was full of the man's scent. She heard the man's helpless sigh from above her head. Shin Yueji's nose was sour, and she was stuffy in his arms. "Don't be angry, okay? You usually indulge me. You will make me feel that you don't care about me." The man rubbed her head. "In your heart, is my love for you so unbearable? Who asked you to be angry with me? I heard that most men are narrow-minded when they are angry with women. Now you know I'm narrow-minded. Shin Yueji, if you want to be angry, then be angry. I won't coax you anymore. Mo Wushang, since you are so difficult to please, why are you still here? Go back to your regent's mansion immediately. I don't need you to accompany me." Shin Yueji finally calmed down. Because of the man's words and the obvious sharp tone, she pushed him away discontentedly and got up from the man's arms. When she saw that the man really didn't say a word this time, nor did he come forward to ask her to stay, but turned around and left the cave. The strong and tall figure slowly disappeared from her sight. Shin Yueji's eyes turned red in an instant. There were countless waves rolling in her heart, which was very unpleasant. Under her body, the man considerately took off the robe for her to prevent her from catching a cold. She could still smell the man's unique scent when she touched it. She knew that the man was angry for her own good. He blamed her for not discussing with him in advance and taking such a big risk. If anything happened, she might not even be able to save her own life. Shin Yueji knew everything, but she was still stubborn, especially when she saw the man was angry but still held back. In her heart, she was happy that the man cared so much about her. Perhaps it was because she was used to hearing the man's gentle, unlingering tone. She couldn't accept him suddenly being a little tougher. She wiped the corners of her eyes and found that there were really tears flowing out. She picked up the clothes on the rock and was about to chase after them, but when she ran out of the cave, she hesitated. She uncontrollably withdrew her legs and feet in time. She sat back down in the distance, feeling lost. She held the man's clothes in her arms. Sitting on the hard and damp stone was not comfortable at all. She was wondering if she had really gone too far this time, but she did all this just to gain Feng Juqing's trust. Even if his trust was zero, there had never been a woman who would throw away her life for him at such a critical moment. In the past, he was the one who protected her, but now, it was another woman who protected him. She was taking a step on her own path of revenge. Chapter 390. She and he were not on the same line. His identity and background were suspicious. Just like him, he had promised himself that he would not lie to her, but he still hid his identity. Shin Yueji lay on the stone, unable to feel the cold and damp touch. Her mind was full of Mo Wushang's resolute back view. When she woke up again, what came into view was a man dressed in black, and his muscular chest was slightly moving. Other than the man's unique scent, Shin Yueji also smelled the fragrance of meat. She thought she was dreaming. Didn't the man leave? Then who was the man holding her in his arms? She stared at the man in confusion, as if trying to figure out if she was dreaming or if the man did not leave at all. She pinched the man's face. "Mo Wushang, is it really you?" The man wrapped her hand in his palm and kissed the back of her hand. "I'm sorry, it was my fault just now. I won't lose my temper with you in the future. Are you hungry? I just went to roast rabbit meat for you." So, Mo Wushang did not leave at all. He just thought that she should be hungry and went to hunt rabbit meat for her. Shin Yueji's nose turned sour. She threw herself into the man's arms. I thought you didn't want me anymore." The words were sad and powerless. For a moment, Shin Yueji's heart was flustered. Mo Wushang was too good to her. He indulged and tolerated her. It was hard for her to imagine what would happen if, because of today, she and Mo Wushang no longer had any entanglements. Would she still be able to calmly do what she wanted to do? Would she still think of him? Many years in the future, would she remember that there was such a man who had once treated her so well? "Don't cry." Mo Wushang gently wiped the tears on her face. His eyes fell on her little mouth that was sobbing because of the grievance. Just now, she said that she was afraid that he would not want her anymore. He carefully held her in his arms. "You are already a woman in my bones. How can I bear to not want you?" He never thought that these words would come out of her mouth. Even if she said no, it would be him. He was afraid that she would say no. He was afraid that she would dislike him one day. But he did not expect, she was actually worried that he might not want her anymore. Don't cry. It's all my fault. I was just afraid that you would be hungry, so I went to find you something to eat. When I came in, I saw that you were asleep, so I went to roast the rabbit. I'll bring it to you when you wake up." He took the rabbit meat from the rack and said, "I just roasted it and it's still warm. Do you want me to feed you? Then why didn't you say anything just now? Why did you turn around and leave?" Shin Yueji sobbed. Just like when she was still Gu Yuqin, she left so decisively without any explanation. "I'm just angry that you risked your life." Mo Wushang looked at her solemnly. "I don't want to go through such a dangerous thing a second time." He was afraid. The woman in front of him was someone he would love for the rest of his life. How could he bear to lose his temper at her? He was just angry at himself. Even if he were to lose his temper, it would only be directed at him. It had nothing to do with her. Even going out was to vent his frustrations. He didn't want to frighten her with his appearance. Chapter 391. Shin Yueji tore a large piece of barbecued meat and handed it to the man's mouth. "You eat first." She met the man's puzzled eyes. Shin Yueji leaned over and kissed the man's smooth chin. "You've been busy and haven't eaten anything yet. Fill your stomach first." "I can't finish it anyway." The man looked at her delicate smile and felt wronged after crying. He opened his mouth and allowed her to bring her little black hand and a piece of rabbit meat into his mouth. "Mo Wushang, I just remembered that you smashed everything in my Jilan courtyard the day before yesterday. Not a single thing is intact. I haven't even settled the score with you, yet you still dare to get angry at me." She could clearly see the man's dark eyes flicker. Mo Wushang kissed her little mouth and asked, "Is the rabbit delicious?" Shin Yueji nodded cooperatively. "Yes." "Is one enough? I'll go and catch another one for you." Sensing that he was trying to change the topic, Shin Yueji sneered and grabbed his collar to stop him from moving. "Where do you want to go?" Come back and tell me clearly. I'm hurt. Shin Yueji didn't understand why he suddenly said that. Her face quickly showed a surprised expression. She quickly pulled his clothes and checked his injuries. Where are you hurt? Take off your clothes and let me see. Shangguan, you beat me. Shangguan, you beat you. Shin Yueji narrowed her eyes and tried to pull off his clothes. Where? Let me see. Besides, you're so good at martial arts. I know Shangguan Yu knows martial arts, but how could he be your opponent? Mo Wushang, tell me the truth. What's going on between you two? You don't care about me anyway. Mo Wushang looked indifferent. It seemed that he was going to pull up his clothes again. It doesn't matter. As long as I love you, it doesn't matter if you don't care about me. Shin Yueji, looking at him twitching, Shin Yueji couldn't help but pull down his big hand. Mo Wushang, are you out of your mind again? Let me ask you, when did you two fight? No, he didn't like me and beat me. Shin Yueji, after a long time, he finally squeezed out a few words from his mouth. Why do I not like you? Perhaps it's because dotes on me. The man looked at her. Shin Yueji was startled. Even the hand that was tearing his clothes was startled. However, she still did not slow down. Instead, she pulled his clothes. The loose robe was on his body. Right now, he was only wearing a tight suit. Therefore, when Shin Yueji tore it off, it was abnormally easy. She then looked at his smooth chest and saw a bright purple mark. She touched it with her little hand. Is this the place? The man looked a bit aggrieved and pressed her hand. Well, it hurts. Rub it. Don't you know how to dodge when he hits you? Don't tell me you can't beat him. Shin Yueji looked at the wound on his chest. It was a white expanse, and this large patch of purple was as dazzling as it could be. It would be a lie to say that she was not angry in her heart. Not only was she angry, but she also felt an inexplicable heartache. Although Shangguan Yu is a gentleman, I've long seen through him. If he really wants to achieve a certain goal, he will do anything, by hook or by crook. He will do anything. Chapter 392. She glared at the man in front of her. When have you ever let yourself be taken advantage of? Tell me, what are you up to this time? No other ideas, doesn't feel sorry for me. Looking at his aggrieved expression, Shin Yueji's heart softened. She quickly touched his face. Okay, I'm afraid of you. Tell me, does it still hurt? Did you see a doctor and apply medicine? The man shook his head. Shin Yueji glared at him. Then what do you want? Kiss me. Shin Yueji's face immediately heated up when she realized that he was asking her to kiss him there. Yet, this man looked so serious and said such serious words. Looking at his serious face, it was as if she was the one who thought wrong and the man was just saying it casually. After helping him put on his clothes, Shin Yueji began to eat the roasted rabbit meat. Forget it, I don't feel sorry for you anyway. If you want to die, go ahead. If you die, I will remarry. Mo Wushang was speechless. Looking at the little woman he missed sitting in front of him and eating with relish, the man's dark eyes were deep and dark. She really didn't care about him. In this barren mountain, Shin Yueji suddenly realized that although the man was not good at cooking, he was quite good at roasting things. She did not know what he had sprinkled on the rabbit meat, but it did not taste sweet. Instead, it tasted moderate and especially delicious. Mo Wushang, are you busy now? The man replied angrily. Not busy. Not busy. Since you're not busy, then go catch another rabbit for me to roast. You're not going. If you don't want to go, then forget it. After eating, I will go catch one myself. Anyway, there are many wild beasts in this barren mountain. If you are not worried that I will be. Before she could finish, she saw the man suddenly stand up, obviously to catch a rabbit. As he stood up, Shin Yueji quickly stood up and ran in front of him, blocking his way. Mo Wushang stood where he was and stared at her for a while. He frowned in confusion. Go and catch it now. Clean it and come back to roast it. You're almost done eating. Shin Yueji didn't say anything. Instead, she raised her greasy little hand and suddenly wrapped it around the man's neck. Her little mouth covered in rabbit grease sealed the man's thin lips. Feeling the man's tall and sturdy body, she was startled. Shin Yueji stopped and then left the man's lips. Is it delicious? For some strange reason, the man nodded stiffly. Shin Yueji's eyes carried a smile. She moved closer and bit the man's thin lips again. Does the wound on your chest still hurt? The man shook his head. Then, Shin Yueji kissed him again. Do you still think I have no conscience? Yes. This time, the man reacted quickly. Shin Yueji stuffed a mouthful of rabbit meat into his mouth and said, Good boy, let's go catch some rabbits. The man's handsome face softened and he calmed down. His beautiful lips curved slightly. I'll be back soon. Wait for me here obediently and don't run around. Looking at the man's back as he left, Shin Yueji could not help but smile. This man, he was really, sometimes when he lost his temper and let his temper run wild, she actually felt that he was damned cute. And, Shin Yueji also found that no matter how angry this man was because of her, as long as he was kissed and coaxed by her, he would immediately recover. Chapter 393. Shin Yueji realized that she didn't feel cold at all. She didn't know if it was because of the barbecued meat, but she felt warm in her heart and body. Shin Yueji didn't know if it was because of her quarrel with the man, but she didn't feel cold at all. Instead, she felt warm in her heart and body. Your Majesty, there is a secret report from the palace. There is an urgent matter that requires you to return to the palace as soon as possible. Above the Broken Heart Cliff. Feng Zhiqing's bloody clothes had been cleaned, and even the wounds on his body had been bandaged. It had been nearly 4 hours since Shin Yueji fell off the cliff. The secret guards he sent down to search for her were still nowhere to be found. Qiu Yang saw him like this and remembered the important secret report from the palace. He couldn't help but remind him, Your Majesty, Imperial concubine Shin is a good person, she will be fine. Dozens of well-trained and highly skilled secret guards have gone down from here to search for her, but now there is no trace of her. Yueji is just a woman, no one knew better than him how high the Broken Heart Cliff was. He originally had his own plan, but he didn't expect that Shin Yueji didn't follow his original plan. He thought that all women in this world were afraid of death. They liked glory and wealth, and relied on their husbands. Even Gu Yueqin, who used to be the center of everything, was nothing more than this. So he felt that she was boring. Even if she liked him, to the point that she would give everything for him, but he didn't love her. Perhaps he still cared about her a little. He cared about how much she cared about him and how much she liked him. He cared about how obedient she was. Perhaps, in his heart, she was still better than those women. After all, she had been with him since he had nothing. But he also didn't expect that a daughter born in a family of generals, who had lived a luxurious life since childhood, who had never suffered any hardships or suffered any grievances, would be willing to die to protect him. Even Gu Yueqin couldn't do it. A few years ago, he held Gu Yueqin's hand. She was also at the bottom of the Broken Heart Cliff, looking at his body full of injuries. She also cried and begged him to let go. But at that moment, how could he really let go? Even though his body was in pain, even though countless wounds had opened up, he did not let go of her hand. It was just that his plan was to pull her up from the bottom. He wanted her to devote all of her loyalty to him. But Shinyueji, however, she pried open her fingers and pried open his fingers one by one. Then, she fell off the cliff. Feng Zhiqing didn't know what was going on, but he felt like he was possessed by a demon. It was like he was in a dream. He was so deep in a dream that he couldn't tell if the scene before him was something that had happened a few years ago, or if it was something that was happening right now. Emperor. Qiu Yang looked at him worriedly. Of course, he also knew that Shinyueji would be smashed to pieces if she fell off this high cliff. But he was still a little shocked when he saw Feng Zhiqing's appearance. The emperor had always been the center of the court affairs. All these years, he had always kept it in his heart. Even the former empress didn't let the emperor put aside the government affairs and put her in charge. Chapter 394. Your Majesty. Qiu Yang was worried, so he called out again. Feng Zhiqing seemed to come back to his senses. His eyes were scarlet and bloodshot. Your Majesty, Imperial concubine will be fine. She is so kind and I believe that God will take care of her. Li Yingying got out of the carriage. She still had a lingering fear after what had happened just now. Her face was pale. Naturally, she had seen the scene where Shinyueji fell off the cliff to protect her man. She was shocked. She had suspected that she had no feelings for the emperor, but now she was willing to die for him. Since she cared about him so much, why did she bring her into the palace to seduce the emperor? Feng Zhiqing saw her familiar face. He didn't know what was wrong with him. Suddenly, he stepped forward and took Li Yingying into his arms. Hugging her tightly, he hugged her tightly. He had always been fearless in the face of danger, but today he lost his composure. Qin, is that you? You're back. Your Majesty, Li Yingying couldn't breathe because of him. She started to struggle in his arms. Your Majesty, I'm Yingying. You've mistaken me for someone else. Your Majesty, when she saw Qiu Yang behind him through the man's body, the latter covered his mouth and coughed slightly. He said respectfully, Your Majesty, there is an urgent matter in the palace that requires the emperor to return to the palace in time. Please help me persuade the emperor to return to the palace as soon as possible. Li Yingying knew that Qiu Yang was talking to her, but she was shocked. She didn't know how to answer him. After all, she wasn't the real empress. Moreover, the emperor was conscious. He just thought she was the former empress at this moment. If she rashly, but when she met Qiu Yang's pleading eyes, Amitabha. Benefactor Qiu is right. Please help me persuade the emperor to return to the palace. Guard Qiu is guarding here. If Miss Shen is found, Guard Qiu will inform the emperor as soon as possible. Kong Yin got out of the carriage. He had seen so much excitement, but he didn't intervene. He had been watching the show with folded arms. Yesterday, he had already told Shinyueji everything. He believed that Shinyueji's choice was all within her plans, but he had never imagined that she would put on such a show. She was returning everything that Feng Zhiqing had given her. He couldn't help but rejoice that he had chosen to rely on this woman. Sure enough, after 9 years of marriage, in terms of understanding, he really couldn't compare to Shinyueji. Seeing that even the emperor's most valued great master Kong Yin was begging her, and seeing the young emperor's pitiful appearance, Li Yingying couldn't bear to see him like this. She gathered her courage and reached out to caress the man's back. Your Majesty, let's return to the palace first. Nothing will happen to the imperial consort. Bodyguard Qiu will be here to guard her for you. General's mansion. From the moment the emperor's carriage was attacked on the Broken Heart Cliff to the moment Shinyueji fell off the cliff, the people in the general's mansion immediately received the news. However, at this moment, the general's residence was as stable as Mount Tai. No one was anxious. I never thought that the Prince Regent would go in person. General, Madam, what do you think? Did the son-in-law do well this time? Double Happiness dutifully poured tea for them. Chapter 395. Madam, and the Prince Regent are down there, a man and a woman alone. What if? You're not serious, what are you talking about? Shin Qiu, who was drinking tea, listened to his words and almost threw it at him. If not for our people guarding below, if they knew that fell off the cliff, you say, what is this girl doing? Why didn't she suddenly tell us? We almost thought that the old-haired person is going to die before the black-haired person. My daughter is really smart. She made such a scene and saved the emperor. In this way, won't the emperor like her even more? Oh, by the way, Double Happiness, where did your young master go? Oh, young master. Double Happiness poured another cup of tea for Madam Shin and said, he knew that something happened to Mississippi. He fell off the cliff and went to the street to cry. If General's wife thinks it's embarrassing, I can pull young master back, but I may not be able to do it alone. General and Madam must send more people to help me. Shin Yueqi pulled a few of his old friends and cried on the street. The common people in the capital didn't know what had happened, but after he did this, they all knew that the eldest daughter of the Shin family had fallen off the cliff to save the emperor, and her life was uncertain. Shin Yueqi's feat was praised by the people in the capital. They didn't expect the eldest daughter of the Shin family to be so heroic. She was not weaker than a man. She was indeed the daughter of the Shin family. Shin Yueqi was crying his heart out on the street. Occasionally, a few passers-by would come over to comfort him. As a result, Shin Yueqi wiped his tears and snot on his body. They quickly walked away with a black face and didn't even want to talk to him. After crying for a long time, Shin Yueqi saw the corner of a white robe appear in front of him. Looking up from the corner of the robe, he saw Shang Guanyu's handsome face, which was covered in scarlet blood. He used to be gentle and refined, but now he was like a wolf and a wild beast. He looked very different from his usual amiable and approachable self. If he used to be a docile cat, now he looked like a crazy tiger. When Shin Yueqi saw him, he only glanced at him before withdrawing his gaze and continuing to sit on the ground, wailing loudly. After crying for a while, he found that Shang Guanyu was still staring at him. He stopped crying and looked up at him. Does young Master Shang Guan plan to sit here and cry with me? She sobbed as if she had been greatly wronged. Shang Guanyu's face did not change much. It was still the same face as before, cold as frost, so stiff that it seemed as if only a layer of dry skin was left. If not for his scarlet eyes, Shin Yueqi would have thought that the man in front of her was just an empty shell that could not move, a body without a soul. Shang Guanyu's thin lips moved slightly, and it took him a long time to say something. He squatted in front of Shin Yueqi and held his shoulders with his big palms. Tell me. She's not real. Is not real. She. His strength made Shin Yueqi's face change color. If he had not cried for a long time and had no strength, he would have slapped him back. Chapter 396. 2 lines of tears slid down Shin Yueqi's cheeks. She's gone at such a young age. As her brother, I'm going to die before him. Father and mother will only have me as their only son, sob sob sob. No, it's impossible, it's impossible. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. How could something happen to Ji-er? It can't be. Ji-er won't die. She won't die. How could it be? Shangguan murmured to himself as he staggered and fell backward. Xinjueqi watched as his body fell back powerlessly. His face was deathly pale and bloodless. He sat on the ground and cried. Because he had fallen on the ground, his palms were bleeding from being cut by the stones. His snow-white robe was also stained with dust, causing his body to become a lot dirtier. But he didn't seem to feel it. He struggled to get up from the ground and walked forward with difficulty. Xinjueqi didn't know where he was going. He called him a few times, but he didn't respond. He was like an emotionless puppet with no soul and only a body before. Now, he gave Xinjueqi the illusion that very soon, he wouldn't even have this physical body anymore. He had seen Shangguanyu's love for Ji for so many years. He had always been free to let it go. Because Ji didn't like him, he never paid attention to Shangguanyu. He didn't observe Shangguanyu carefully. He only knew that there was such a person who had been pestering Ji. This was the first time that Xinjueqi looked at him seriously. After all, he was the eldest son of the Shangguan family and the only son of the family. He couldn't die like this. It was true that Ji faked her death. What if he really killed Shangguanyu? Thinking of this, Xinjueqi cried enough. He quickly got up from the ground and chased after Shangguanyu. Shangguanyu stumbled and swayed as he walked aimlessly. There seemed to be a road of no return in front of him, and there seemed to be nails under his feet. He couldn't even walk steadily. Xinjueqi knew that he couldn't respond to him. In order to not attract too much attention, he didn't call out to him either. He just followed behind him, following him all the way to the wilderness, through the forest, to a deserted place with few people, and then through the mountains and rivers, to the broken heart cliff. He only relied on his footsteps to run all the way. He didn't feel tired at all. It felt like he was a puppet being controlled by someone else. He was muttering Ji-er's name. As he passed through the forest, a wild beast rushed up to bite him. He didn't resist, letting the beast bite his arm. He didn't seem to feel any pain. For a moment, Xinjueqi thought that he was going to be eaten by the beast. His bloody arms were all bitten by wild beasts. Later, Xinjueqi found out that Shangguanyu really wanted to be eaten by wild beasts. He wanted to die. It was as if the thing he had been chasing for his whole life had suddenly disappeared and would never appear in this world again. He had lost all hope of living, so, Xinjueqi was horrified. He didn't expect that this skinny man would have such deep feelings for his little sister. It was as if he was possessed. If it wasn't for Mo Wuxiang, he really couldn't help but try to matchmake Mo Wuxiang and his little sister. In the future, his little sister would marry such a man. She would be the one in charge of the family, and this man would also do his best to pamper and protect her. He would never let her suffer any grievances. Chapter 397. He saved him from the claws of the beast. It was as if he knew that he was following him. He did not turn around to look at him, nor did he speak to him. He continued to murmur the same words that he had said along the way. He continued to walk forward. When he passed by a patch of water, he did not know how deep the water was and walked straight. As a result, he almost drowned. He was so frightened that he quickly jumped into the water and fished him out. He pressed on his chest to let him breathe. He was already a soulless body. This time, he couldn't move. It was even scarier. Fortunately, he saved him in time. The man was fine. When he woke up, he pushed Shangguanyu away immediately and continued to stumble forward. Xinjueqi had no choice but to follow Shangguanyu to the end. He had walked for a long time with Shangguanyu, and there was no path on the cliff. When Xinjueqi saw Shangguanyu jump down, he was shocked and hurriedly used his lightness skill to catch him. In short, Xinjueqi felt like he was going to be crippled. He even regretted following him. Why did he follow him? Why didn't he just let him die? Damn it, was this man so fragile? He was so fragile that he was about to die. He couldn't live without his woman, could he? Although he couldn't live without his sister, she was his sister. They were different. Finally, he reached the place he wanted to go, the Broken Heart Cliff. His white robes were no longer clean. They were covered in dust and dirt. Even his handsome face had many scratches and scratches. His arm was covered in blood. It was hard to tell if his arm was still intact or broken. He stood at the top of the Broken Heart Cliff, looking down at the smoke-shrouded cliff. Why did you save me? Shinjuichi was speechless. My father and your father are old friends. If something happens to you, how are we going to explain to your father? You're the only son your father has. Speaking of this, Shinjuichi couldn't help but sigh. Shangguanyu, can we not be so weak? They were all men, and men were supposed to achieve great things. Was there a need to spend all this effort on romance? If my sister dies, you won't be able to live, right? Tell me, aren't you ashamed? Ashamed? Hot, Shangguanyu smiled weakly. From the moment I followed tirelessly, I didn't know what shame was. He turned around and saw Shinjuichi's disdainful face. He smiled. Young Master Shin, you must have no idea what it feels like to be in love. That feeling, when facing the person you love, you can only hope that everything is good for her. If you love her, you can become a demon for her, you can go crazy for her. In the past, I tirelessly followed behind her. Even though I knew that she didn't like me, hated me, or even loathed me, I was still diligent and happy. As long as I could see her every day, it was a kind of satisfaction to me. Do you know, when I see her holding a whip in disgust and waving it at me? Shinjuichi, tell me, my heart isn't made of iron. I've sacrificed for so long, for so many years, and suffered so much coldness and discrimination. I have no regrets, but when another man is accepted by her, I also feel pain, jealousy, and jealousy. Chapter 399. Why was she already dead before he could even make a move? She didn't even give him a chance to take her back. She just left and disappeared, as if she didn't exist. Do you really hate me that much? In your heart, you hate me so much that I didn't even have a little chance. You made me, just when I finally made up my mind to get you, you decisively chose to die instead of giving me the chance to do so. Shinjuichi looked at his heartbroken expression and sighed in her heart. Compared to him, her nonsense really paled in comparison. Hey, brother Shangguan, there's always a chance. Although my little sister fell down, we don't know if she's alive or not. We haven't found her body, so maybe she's still alive. His words rekindled Shangguanyu's hope. He looked at him for a while and then withdrew his gaze. There was only a touch of sarcasm at the corner of his mouth. He suddenly laughed. How is that possible? To fall from such a high place like Broken Intestines Cliff, even a Jianghu martial artist with great martial arts might not be able to survive, let alone a weak woman like her. In that kind of dangerous situation, she was not prepared at all. What if she did? Shinjuichi anxiously continued his words. Brother Shangguan, you know that my little sister has always been smart and has a lot of wicked ideas. She's never willing to let herself be at a disadvantage. She's such a smart person and has so many wicked ideas. How could she throw away her life without any preparation? How could she defend herself in that kind of situation? Shangguanyu looked at him. Brother Yuichi, you don't have to say anything. I know what you're worried about. You're worried that if I die on this heartbroken cliff, your general's mansion won't be able to explain it to my father. It doesn't matter. My father and mother are sensible people. They know how I feel about Now that is gone, they should have known that I would make such a choice. Don't worry, my father and mother won't blame you. Shang Guanyu's words had already made Xinhuiqi understand what he wanted to do. His previous guess was not wrong at all. He was indeed courting death and wanted to follow his sister. Xinhuiqi was very glad that he had caught up. Otherwise, because of Er's joke, an innocent life would have been lost. He didn't know what he was feeling right now, but when he saw Shang Guanyu really turn around and jump off the cliff, he couldn't tell what he was feeling right now. I've come to accompany you. We can't be together in this life, but I hope that after death, I will die with you in the same place, so you won't be lonely. No. Brother Shangguan, is not dead. Xinhuiqi anxiously shouted at him. But Shangguanyu just smiled and didn't believe it at all. His good-looking lips curled into a smile as he glanced at Xinhuiqi's face, which was slightly out of control due to shock. Brother Yuiqi, is there any meaning in lying to me just to keep me alive? You should know that for so many years, I've lived for is dead, and I've long been like a walking corpse in this world. It's better to let me go down to accompany her. It's so dark underground, and she must be afraid, so only I can accompany her. Chapter 400. Xinhuiqi found that his head was really swollen now. He found that this guy was a bit stupid. No wonder his sister didn't like him. If he was so stupid, it would be strange if she liked him. He hesitated on the spot. He had just said that Yu was not dead in a moment of desperation. He was afraid that he would not be able to control himself and tell Shang Guanyu everything later. After all, had told him that only the people of the general's mansion could know, and no one else could know. But if he didn't say it, the cold wind blew on his face, making him feel cold. While he was hesitating, the white blood-red robe suddenly jumped. Xinhuiqi was shocked and cursed out loud. Then, he saw the snow-white figure falling straight down. He was shocked and rushed down without thinking, jumping down the cliff with him. When he finally grabbed the corner of Shang Guanyu's clothes, Shang Guanyu felt someone pulling him and opened his eyes. He almost couldn't believe that Xinhuiqi also jumped down with him. Brother Yuiqi, he pursed his lips. At this moment, he didn't know what to say. His heart was in a mess. Was dead, he had no hope of living, but he was the only one who wanted to die. He didn't want to drag Xinhuiqi down with him. Uncle Shen and Auntie Shen had just lost their beloved daughter. It was hard for them to accept seeing their daughter die before them. If Xinhuiqi were to leave them now, he didn't know if their bodies would be able to take it. He grabbed Xinhuiqi's wrist, and wanted to send him up with the last bit of internal force. The wind was too strong at the bottom of the cliff, especially when they were falling straight down. It was too fast for Xinhuiqi to bear. His face was almost distorted by the wind. He threw himself into Shang Guanyu's arms and cried bitterly. Wait for me to finish talking. Jump, I don't want to die yet. You bastard, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. Don't think about reincarnating. I'll pester you to death. Brother Yuiqi. Shang Guanyu looked at him with mixed feelings as he threw himself into his arms, his hands holding his waist tightly, and he had no strength left to send him up. In the past, only women would throw themselves at men. In the past, there were many women who did the same to him, but because he only had in his heart, he would usually reject them completely. Of course, there were a few women who didn't stop them. They were from aristocratic families and took advantage of the moment when he was unprepared. But for a man, this was definitely the first time Shang Guanyu had experienced this. For a moment, he didn't know what to do. He just looked at Shinjuichi and listened to the whistling wind and his painful cries. He didn't know whether he should hug him or not. He just stood there, not knowing what to do. Shinjuichi didn't feel him hugging her for a long time. She was so scared that she took the initiative to grab his hand and hug herself as they fell. Shangguanyu, I'm warning you, when we reach the bottom, you'll fall under me and be my cushion. It doesn't matter if you're smashed to pieces, but even if I die, I want to die a beautiful death. I can't die like a piece of meat. You. Brother Yuichi, let go of me. I can send you up. Chapter 402. The two of them behaved intimately, sticking close to each other. If one of them was a woman, they would definitely be lovers who would go through life and death together, but they were two men. That was why Ji Chu suddenly coughed. Ji Chu wasn't surprised by their appearance, especially Shangguanyu. However, he didn't expect Shinjuichi to appear here, so he was greatly surprised. Young Master Shangguan, eldest young master. He greeted the two of them. Seeing him, Shangguanyu's mind flashed with countless conjectures. Finally, he mocked himself. He didn't doubt that it was Ji Chu who saved them. But Ji Chu was Imo Wushang's bodyguard. If he was here, did it mean that Imo Wushang was here too? He mocked himself because he thought he was the first to arrive when Ji was in trouble. But he didn't expect that Imo Wushang would always be one step ahead of him. His emotions probably affected Shinjuichi, who was beside him. Shinjuichi jumped out of his arms and kicked him. Shangguanyu staggered and almost fell to the ground. Luckily, Ji Chu caught him in time. He barely managed to stand up. Shangguanyu, is there something wrong with your brain? I told you just now that Ji is fine. She's alive and well. You didn't believe me and insisted on jumping down with me. Not only is there something wrong with your brain, I think your IQ is 0. Shangguanyu was speechless. Although he was in deep grief, he wasn't completely mindless and had lost his memory. Shinjuichi said that he was the one who insisted on jumping down with him. Shinjuichi didn't even look at him. He was still throwing a tantrum. It's all thanks to Bodyguard Ji's sudden appearance. If it weren't for Bodyguard Ji's sudden appearance and saving our lives, I would have been smashed to pieces along with you on this heartbroken cliff. By the way, Guard Ji, where's my little sister? Oh. Ji Chu glanced at Shangguanyu and said respectfully, Miss Shen is with my master. Take me to her. Young Master Shen, please follow me. Is Ji really fine? If it was Shinjuichi, Shangguanyu wouldn't believe it. But if it was Ji Chu who said it, Shangguanyu's eyes had been glued to Ji Chu from the moment Shangguanyu asked Ji Chu. He didn't miss any expression on Ji Chu's face. Ji Chu smiled, Miss Shen is indeed safe and sound with my master. If young Master Shangguan doesn't believe me, you can go and take a look with this subordinate. Naturally, Shangguanyu would follow him to take a look. Right now, he didn't believe anyone, even if it was Ji Chu. However, he still had to confirm it, because Ji Chu had no reason to lie to him. In the cave, Shinjuichi consecutively ate 2 roasted rabbits. In fact, she was planning to let Imo Wushang catch the second one for himself. However, when he finished roasting it, he discovered that she had already finished the first one. Thus, he took the initiative to hand over the roasted rabbit to her. She ate all the meat, and the man only ate a few mouthfuls of her leftover bones and some bad meat. Seeing Imo Wushang's appearance, Shinjuichi felt a little upset. Thus, she changed her sleeping position and turned her back to him, planning to not look at him. She was so full that she didn't want to move. She rubbed her stomach and groaned, Imo Wushang. The man heard her and walked to her. He bent down in front of her and saw her hand on her bulging stomach. His little face was fierce. Chapter 403. I'm too full. I don't want to move. Give me a massage. The man obediently rubbed her belly, carefully and with just the right amount of strength. Is it very uncomfortable? What do you think? Shin Yueji rolled her eyes at him. Try eating 2 rabbits at once. And such a big rabbit. Mo Wushang, rabbits are so cute. How can you eat them? Shin Yueji covered her face. She didn't know what she was doing. She just said whatever came to her mind. The man looked at her helplessly. Good girl, I brought the rabbits to you after I cleaned them outside. He was afraid that she would be reluctant to eat the rabbits because they were so cute. So he asked Ji Chu to clean them up outside. It's not comfortable to sleep in the cave. When will the dog emperor come to me? I don't want to sleep here for the next few nights. Hearing her dissatisfied complaints, Mo Wushang rubbed her belly a little harder. Shin Yueji felt it. She slapped his hand away and glared at him. What are you doing? If you're not comfortable, you can sleep in my arms. I'll hold you to sleep. Shin Yueji squinted at his handsome face for a while and suddenly smiled. That won't do. I'll sleep for so long. What if your body becomes stiff? I'll feel sorry for you. She leaned over and kissed the man's beautiful face. Mo Wushang, will you sleep with me? The man's black eyes were full of warmth. He looked at her lovingly. Do you want to be alone? Yes. Shin Yueji nodded cooperatively. I feel very uncomfortable without you holding me to sleep. My heart is empty. Every morning when I wake up, I will subconsciously touch the bed, but I'm very disappointed when I don't touch you. Mo Wushang, do you think I'm sick? The man didn't speak but stared at her. Just when Shin Yueji thought he was going to do something, the man suddenly smiled. The man who didn't smile gave people the feeling of a cold sculpture. The sculpture was so perfect that it didn't look like a real person. In the end, it lacked a trace of warmth. When he smiled, he was even more eye-catching and beautiful than a myriad of flowers blooming at the same time. In other words, even 100 flowers could not compare to his alluring smile. For a moment, Shin Yueji was stunned. She stared at him blankly. It was indeed rare for a man to be this beautiful. Mo Wushang, she reached out to touch his face, feeling his inhuman existence. Why are you laughing? Such a beautiful smile almost made her think that she was in a dream. It was so beautiful that it didn't seem like a real person. It seduced her so much that she lost 6 of her 7 spirits. In fact, Shin Yueji even had an illusion that if Mo Wushang hadn't liked her so strongly and had smiled at her, she might not have hated him so much. After all, there was no one in this world who wouldn't like such a good-looking man. Even if she already had Feng Juqing in her heart at that time, but, can't leave me now. Hearing the man's explicit words, Shin Yueji coughed in a low voice and then turned her face away awkwardly. Don't talk nonsense. When did I say that I can't leave you? Don't flatter yourself. The man smiled and kissed her pouting lips. I was wrong. I can't leave Looking at Sheng Guanyu's pale face, Shin Yueji crossed his arms, shook his head, and sighed. See? Why did my little sister choose the regent? This is the difference between the two of you. You always listen to and let her beat and scold you. This will make think that you are very useless and incompetent. The Prince Regent is different. Although he is also beaten and scolded, he has his own opinions on some things. For example, this matter of putting on clothes, even can't do anything about it. Now, she took a closer look at him. His skin was fair, his legs were long and slender, and even that face that could bring calamity to a nation made one unable to look away. Also, his voice was sweet and charming, and it was impossible to tell if he was a man or a woman. Perhaps because she was looking at him seriously, Shin Yueji's eyes fell on his chest, and she found that his chest was flat. Generally, if a coquettish vixen like her was really a woman, her chest would definitely be bigger than other women. It was impossible for it to be so flat. Chapter 406. The anger in her heart didn't lessen. Instead, it deepened. If she hadn't pushed the door open, this man would have jumped into her arms. And Mo Wuxiang didn't reject her. If she hadn't spoken up, perhaps the two of them would have hugged each other. Who knew, in the end, they might have rolled onto the bed together. If you like men, tell me. Why are you pestering me? At least I'm straight. She didn't mind two men liking each other. She just couldn't accept it. To her, Mo Wuxiang would rather be with a woman than a man. I won't disturb you anymore. It's not what you see. There's nothing going on between us. Mo Wuxiang felt a headache coming on, especially when he saw Shin Yueji's calm face. Although the anger was gone, her face was still unfamiliar and calm. This made Mo Wuxiang feel inexplicably anxious. I'm talking to him about something. Can he almost talk about being in your arms and holding you together when we talk about it? Would a normal man call you a shang so intimately when talking about something? The man in red, Mo Wuxiang, you don't have to explain. I understand. I knew you hated me for so long. You must have some ulterior motive for suddenly being so nice to me. Isn't your motive? The man's voice was low. Shin Yueji's eyes reddened instantly. She stared at him. You're being mean to me. The man choked and softened his tone helplessly. He hugged her and rubbed his chin against her restless head. How can I be mean to you when I can't even wait to love you? Believe me, okay? I really only like you from the beginning. You really only like me. I'm the only woman you like. But you like men. Liking men is different from liking women. The man in red snorted a few times. Hearing him laugh, Shin Yueji couldn't help but stare at him. She narrowed her eyes dangerously. Is it funny? The man in red stopped laughing immediately and said with a serious face, no. In his heart, he silently prayed for his friend of many years. What kind of troublesome daughter-in-law did he find? Look at this wild cat. Not only was it hard to coax, but it was also insatiable. Especially the slap he gave to Mo Wuxiang without any hesitation, he was still in a daze. Ever since he was young, who dared to hit him? Even those enemies who wished for Mo Wuxiang to die would not dare to even touch a single strand of his hair, let alone hit him. However, this woman was different. Not only did she hit him, but Mo Wuxiang did not get angry. Instead, he even had to lower himself to coax her. Not only was it hard to believe, but it was also inconceivable. Hong Fui. Mo Wuxiang lightly spat out 3 words from his thin lips. When the man in red heard his name, he immediately pricked up his ears, only to see the man lowering his head and explaining to Shin Yueji with a doting expression. He grew up with me. His personality is different from other men. He likes to cause trouble and is flamboyant. Don't lower yourself to his level. There's nothing between me and him. Shin Yueji was quiet for a moment. Then you two stayed in the same room in the middle of the night, and he was already charging at you. Why didn't you dodge? Chapter 407. Mo Wuxiang was the regent of the Feng country. In private, there must be a lot of things that couldn't be said in public. So Xin Yueji didn't ask much. She just listened to his explanation and went out. The man followed her out without hesitation. Why are you here suddenly? If you want to see me, ask someone in your mansion to tell me. It's windy outside. I'll go find you myself. It's nothing. I just suddenly wanted to see you. Now that I've seen you, I should go back. Before she turned around, the man's tall body pulled her into his arms again and hugged her tightly. He hugged himself very tightly, so tightly that there was not a single gap left. What are you doing? Let go of me. I should go back. Xin Yueji felt uncomfortable being hugged so tightly by him. She didn't think about it and tried to break his hand. However, the man directly lifted her chin and kissed her. For a moment, her mouth was filled with the familiar smell of the man. The moment his lips and tongue came in, Xin Yueji opened her mouth subconsciously. He chased after her little tongue playfully and tangled with her. After the kiss, she gasped heavily. Being pulled into the man's arms gently, she heard the man's low laughter. I'm very happy. Xin Yueji's little face was a little red from the kiss. She leaned against his chest. The cold wind couldn't blow in, and the blush on her face didn't go away for a long time. If we encounter such things in the future, can't you explain it to me quickly? You're very happy to see me angry, aren't you? Because he wanted to see her jealous look. It looked very real, but it was very far away from him, like a dream. If he hadn't seen the tears at the corner of her eyes, Mo Wuxiang might have looked at her a little longer. She was angry, which meant that she had him in her heart and cared about him. That was why he wanted to see her angry look more. He wanted to know that he still had a place in her heart. Although it wasn't a deep place, he knew that she was not indifferent to his existence in her heart. At least she would feel uncomfortable when she saw him with other women. Even if he wouldn't be with other women. It's going to be dawn soon. I should go back and pack up a bit. When dawn comes, I'll set off with His Majesty back to the palace. After staying in the man's arms for a while, Xin Yueji leaned against his chest, listening to his strong heartbeat, and spoke in a muffled voice. Actually, she didn't really suspect Mo Wuxiang. It was just that she was a little unhappy at that moment. Now that she knew about it, she was a little depressed that she had lost her composure. I'll send you back, okay? No need. Don't the two of you have something to discuss? I can go back by myself. The man was silent for a while. Hong Fui did have something important to discuss with him. Looking at the little woman in his arms, it was obvious that she did not want him to send her back. He paused for a moment. Should I ask Ji Chu to send you back? Xin Yueji said nothing. The man's voice became gentler. I'm worried about you going back alone. Let him send you. All right. Coming out of the man's embrace, Xin Yueji looked at the man's handsome face and suddenly called his name, Mo Wuxiang. The man lowered his eyes to look at her. Will you use me? I won't. These two words were resolute and decisive.